It's Sunday, 13th October 2024. This is Nation Watch. My name is Mervyn Williams, your host. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. October has been designated Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and on behalf of the leader, executive, and members of the People's National Congress Reform, take this opportunity to salute survivors of breast cancer. Some of you I know. We salute you for your strength and the inspiration you offer to others. To those living with breast cancer, we keep you in our prayers. Today, we will be discussing some very important economic issues, and with me in studio is former Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, who also served for many years as Director of Budget at the Ministry of Finance, long before he became the Minister of Finance. Mr. Jordan, welcome to Nation Watch.
Thank you, Mervyn. It's good to be here.
As always, having technically sound persons on Nation Watch to discuss these very, very important issues, bringing clarity to our viewers across the world, and particularly here at home, is always very important to Nation Watch. So thanks again for being here. We're going to be looking at a bit of footage here, and I'd like our viewers to bear in mind the word instantaneously, and I'd like you also to remember the political origin within recent times of the people-centered development strategy and putting people first in development. This has been the mantra of the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, and it forms the basis for the developmental policy that the People's National Congress Reform has put together or is putting together for when the time comes to take the reins of government. So let's listen to Copycat in action in the Parliament of Guyana.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. This people-centered policy-making matrix of the PPP civic government is one that always put the welfare of our people first. I wish to announce now a one-off cash grant of $200,000 to every household in Guyana. A one-off cash grant of $200,000 to every household in Guyana. This will see an injection of $60 billion of disposable income into the Guyanese households countrywide. We will begin this one-off cash grant payment to household instantaneously.
Mr. Jordan, of significance here is the fact that soon after Mr. Ali finished making his announcement in the Parliament, Second Vice President Jagdeo came out to say that this payment will not really be instantaneous, but it'll be done by the end of 5 months. Comment, please, on that contradiction high up in government and what it means to citizens generally and the confidence of people in any administration.
Well, thank you once again, Mervyn, for inviting me. I want to say blessed Sunday to all our viewers, of course, and take the opportunity to send condolences to the wife and family and friends and relatives of Clinton Williams, who died yesterday. What you're seeing and the disconnect and the disjointedness displayed between Ali and Jagdeo is nothing new, really. It's throughout his presidency that disconnect has been shown. He says one thing, and then Jagdeo goes out in his press conference or otherwise, and in some way or the other, either overshadows him or contradicts him. You wonder whether there's any love lost between the two of them. But that aside, essentially, Jagdeo coming out and saying that this exercise would not be instantaneous, which means immediately, right now, whatever you want, but will be over a protracted period of at least 5 months, suggests that this was a knee-jerk response to the cries and the pleas and the begging, people on their knees asking the government to do something about the spiraling cost of living. As you know, this has gone on deaf ears. There have been palliatives from since 2020 when they came in. There have been palliatives, but there have been no serious attempt to address the underlying causes of the cost of living. And as such, year in, year out, as the amount being budgeted, right, gets larger, 5 billion last year for measures, 7 billion this year for measures, as those amounts get larger, it seems to be in consonance with the spiraling of the cost of living. There's no ease up, so to speak. So yes, I don't see these sets of measures, as populist as they are, has been the result of any studied approach to the cost of living problems that you have in Guyana. I mean, a studied approach would have first of all accepted that there's a huge problem with cost of living in Guyana. There's an even bigger problem of poverty in Guyana. All right? I mean, international studies, international organizations have put that anywhere between 35 and 40-something% poverty. So you would presume that measures will be there to attack poverty, short, medium, and long-term measures in a studied approach. One of the first things you want to do is get a poverty map. Who are those we want to immediately target, essentially? I've seen a lot of clapping and rejoicing on Facebook and otherwise about this announcement of the 200,000, for example. But this $200,000, let us be very, very clear about it based on what he has said, is a universal $200,000. So the person who's announcing it will get $200,000 because he has a household. Jaglio will get 200,000. All his ministers will get 200,000. All of the fat cats will get 200,000. You know who would not generally get the 200,000?
The poorest of the poor.
The poorest of the poor. The person sleeping on the GPO. The person sleeping on the corner of Guyana stores. The person sleeping in the parks, on the benches in the parks, and so on. The squatter settlements. The dam, the people who live on the dam, the people who live on the seawall, and so forth. They're not going to get $200,000. I mean, that's the reality of it. Those who have the wherewithal and who already are in a position to counter cost of living increases, they're the ones who are going to be targeted first to get the money.
Mr. Jordan, long before these measures were announced, I don't want to go as far back as Dr. Clive Thomas just yet. But when there was an upsurge in the price of oil, the People's National Congress reform said to the government, you have a windfall in profits from oil. You never anticipated receiving the difference between the price you got for oil now and the price you were getting before. The PNCR said to the government, by our computations, there's enough money from that windfall in profits from oil to disburse to every household in this country at least $300,000. The government shut its ears, closed its hard heart to the recommendation that was people-centered, and decided to give the people of this country zero, decided to pressure the teachers, notwithstanding their appearances on picket line for weeks, decided to bypass the public servants who were crying out for a morsel to add to their table for their children. This $300,000 was there for the taking, there for giving to the citizens of this country. But now, because the pressure is mounting, because people are disillusioned, people have lost hope, people are crying, people are starving, the poverty rate is over 53%. 53% of citizens are living on less than $5 per day. The pressure is up, and so they're now finding an avenue to put money in homes and at the same time to create a slush fund, which we'll come to a bit later. What manner of a government suffers the people the way the PPP does, and then seeks to come again later on to say, with a smaller morsel, we still love you and we care.
Well, it's a government that sees itself not governing for the entirety of the country, but sees itself put in place by a constituency, right? That is aligned with their, not necessarily their philosophy or so on, but is aligned with them in other ways. It is a government that puts premium, puts prominence to physical infrastructure as opposed to human. In other words, they put physical infrastructure and human development in conflict with each other rather than in harmony. What do I mean? As you can see, the budget has about 1.1 trillion, 1.146 trillion, plus some more that they took supplementary, has a physical infrastructure side of nearly or over $700 billion.
Yeah.
Okay? Which essentially means that roughly $400 billion has been left for other things, including maintenance. That in itself suggests that the government is not putting the emphasis that we're talking about here on the human side of development. It is not giving a face to it, even in face of all the crises that our people have been facing, so to speak. When you look at the Stabrook News's how cost of living, for example, which is unscientific, right? But it gives you the pulse of the person on average.
Mm.
I read 2 Mondays gone, and there was a guy who said, listen, he was earning $800 a couple of years ago, which is under the coalition government, essentially. He's a bus driver. He's 39, he got 5 kids. And he was earning $800 per day. And in his own words, he said he lived comfortably. He says today he's earning $20,000 per day. And he can't even save $1,000 out of the 20. So he's got an increase within a short space of time of multiples of the $800. But where before he was living comfortably, where there was no spiral inflation, there was no shortage of food and so forth. He's now earning multiples of that 800, but he can't provide properly for his kids. He can't save $1,000, he says, and he's forever short. That is just one typical example of what is happening with all the concentration on concrete, as opposed to concrete measures to lift people out of poverty. And so when they began, or they did an internal poll, and the poll was telling them in no uncertain terms that even your supporters are rebelling about the cost of living and about their inability to lift their standard of living. Hence, you see this knee-jerk run out, because these were the said people. Jagdeo, Ali, Nandalal, all of them were upfront telling you they do not believe in cash transfers, which was a contradiction anyhow, because they had given cash transfers during the COVID the COVID that we had. They had given $25,000, and you know the problems with that. We probably will have to visit that in the context of 200,000.
Yeah.
So this again is another one-off. It is 8 times the size of the COVID grant, but this is another one-off, which indicates to you again that it's a knee-jerk reaction to what the poll perhaps told them, that these people are complaining bitterly. So they have put the 200,000 out there, and there's such a concept in economics called money illusion, right? You know, I mean, it fails between, say, a lowering of income tax rates or an increase in tax threshold, as opposed to giving you $200,000. A person going to opt for 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But what people don't seem to figure out right away, it's a one-off again. So when they put the 200,000 in the people's hands, however they do it, and perhaps we'll talk about that too, the people will be joyful for that small period of time when they perhaps could pay off some bills for people who do be hiding from, who the trust, or, who the owe and all this kind of thing. They pay off those bills. They be able to go to the supermarket and pay some and buy some food and so on. But that will soon end, and very soon it will end. And then you're back to square one. Let me give you another thing before we jump in. This 200,000, populous as it be, is consistent with what the PPP did in 2014, late 2014, with the Because We Care cash grant. People don't seem to remember that the Because We Care cash grant was introduced in 2014 after they figured, an unpopular government figured, that they could buy votes by putting in a populist measure. When we went in there, we found that it was a one-off. They run to say that we remove it and so on. But it was a one-off. They had their own cabinet memo that it was a one-off. So you have this here one-off. Ali probably misspoke. Jagdo came right away and corrected and said, no. This thing is going to be disbursed over 5 months, minimum.
Boss the boy.
Minimum. So think about it. It then means 5 months will carry you somewhere around March.
Yeah.
And it could be longer.
Yeah.
Okay? Because
no commencement date has been named.
No commencement date. And that in any case, by the way, rather than instantaneous, Jagdo said nothing before Christmas.
Exactly.
Nothing before Christmas. So I don't know how instantaneous, which is in science and economics and social and how that word became a moving part. But think about it again. It's a one-off, and it's designed to go well into the election year.
Yeah.
People are predicting that another one may come and so on. Perhaps, but I don't see it on the horizon. If it comes, that's fine. But it's one-off. So, contrary to what everybody's saying, that the government has come wrong to what they have been saying, and they've come wrong to Clive Thomas's thing and so on, it is not so. That was not Clive Thomas's Buxton proposal. Clive Thomas's Buxton proposal was intended to be a sustained annual transfer of resources as long as oil was being pumped.
Yeah.
This is a one-off. And nobody knows what is the objective of this one-off beyond trying to be a balm, a salve of the horrendous problems being faced by a large number of our citizens. Okay? And that is where the problem comes, right? That these bombs, and whoever I really want to come in, but we have to get this out. They tried this selective approach of transferring monies to their supporters, whether it's in Berbice, Region 5, Region 6, whether it's Essequibo Coast, whether it's in some of the hinterland. They went there and transferred monies under different guises of small business grants. You were given, some places got 100,000, some small business grants, some got 50,000, some got 250,000. As recent as last week, they were transferring monies in Region 6. They had done so in Region 5 either early this year or late last year.
And Region 1 last month.
And Region 1 and Morocco and all these different places, they were selectively transferring monies. Those, again, as I said, they one-off monies. When the money is done, the grumbling continues. So they come now with a universal transfer of the 200,000. Again, a lazy approach, right? Rather than targeting those who really need it, right? So you're going to have huge problems with the implementation and huge complaints, right? I know you're going to come to the pink slip and so on, so I'm going to leave that to you.
No, but here's where I want to go. It is evident in everything that the Jagdeo Ali regime does that there is provision, deliberate it seems, for corruption. Let's look at this universal grant that is being proposed. I have some numbers here I want to share with the viewing public. These numbers, I know you may have them in your head. Census 2012. First of all, we don't know what is the government's current definition of household.
Correct.
But by the census definition of household, in 2012, and in 2012, that was the last published census report. there were 210,124 households.
Mhm.
And that was a 15% growth from 2002, 10 years before.
Mhm.
So there was a 15% growth over 10 years in the number of households in Guyana. This government refuses to release the census of 2022. We might get some answers from this cash grant. Now, this is where we are now. Based on the numbers released by Ali, you can deduce that he is saying there are 300,000
Correct.
households.
Correct.
Now, if you use the 15% growth from 2002 to 2012, there can only be a maximum of 241,642 households
Mhm.
at the moment.
Mhm.
For easy conversation, let's round it to 240,000. Don't kill me for what? 4,000, right? No. There should be in the region of 240 households. But Ali says they're paying to
240,000.
240,000 households. But Ali is saying that they're going to be paying out $200,000 to a total of 300,000 households.
Mhm.
It means that before this process starts, Ali and company, whoever engineered this thing, have securely set aside $12 billion to pay out to phantom households.
Well, Marvin, that's one way of looking at it, but there might be a slight error in the assumption that you're making. You're assuming that there's a uniform increase between 2002, 2012, and 2022.
Let's assume that there's not. Jagdio says there are 264,000.
Right. So that figure we have to assume comes from the latest census, 264. We haven't seen the census.
No.
They seem to have access to it, but 264,000. So let us take all those as a given.
Let us take that
As a given.
264
Yes.
and let's look
Yes.
at it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And it means that there's a difference
Up
still
to the 6,000.
of 36,000
So this is
households.
what I want to indicate to you. The first problem we have is this.
But by the way, before you go, who's right, Ali or Jagdio? And who should we listen to in
No.
terms of the numbers?
Well, I don't think any two of them. I don't think any two of them is right. Because both of them are trying to fudge numbers. But I want to come to it. Let
Sure.
me take.
Sure.
Let us assume that 264,000 is correct. Ali, in his address, said that $200,000 will be paid to households. Okay. Now, in the census, everybody is counted, whether you're a Guyanese, a Venezuelan, a Bangladeshi, or what.
Whoever is found at the house.
On census day,
Mhm.
everybody is counted. So the 264,000 households have not been separated between Guyanese households and foreigners' households. That's the first problem you got.
Mhm.
Because they later on said it is only to be paid to Guyanese households.
Mhm.
So the question is, how many Guyanese households are there? It is not 264,000. 264,000 is the census households that includes foreigners. All the foreigners in Guyana are counted at that particular point. Bangladeshi, Sri Lankans, Jamaicans, all the people working at the different international agencies and so on, they have households, they are counted on census day. So what is the figure for Guyanese households?
Release the census report, please.
That's where your question now comes in. Because it will be less than 264.
Yep.
So let us assume, without any information, it's back to your 240.
Exactly.
And let us assume they're talking about 300,000 Guyanese households.
Yep.
So we have a difference now of roughly 60,000.
Yep.
60,000 multiplied by 200,000 gives you $12 billion.
Yes.
Where is this $12 billion? How is this $12 billion going to be? That's the question you want to ask.
Exactly.
How is this 12 billion? And how that's why I tell you about this knee-jerk position that they've come out with. No study done whatsoever. How even if you took the census 264,000, could tell me now that you are budgeting for 300,000, how did you come up with the 36,000 difference? Let us assume that 264,000 were indeed Guyanese households, which we know is false.
Yes.
How did you come up with 36,000? Why not 50? Why not 28? Why not 10? You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
You have a huge problem. And then I saw him mumbling. I saw Daglo mumbling something when I asked the question, what about the 36,000? Well, there's something about maybe they didn't count. They got to go back and count some people, and some people didn't count. And you got to take account of the squatters. How many squatters are there? Where are they located? Look, to avoid this problem that is inherent in this issue about households, they should step back and say, listen, we're listening. They indeed got problems with this question about household. We are going to be given, as I suggested on Thursday morning on CAMS TV, $100,000 to Guyanese residents, adult Guyanese residents. That is easier. Because first of all, here's the advantages of doing that. One, you got a problem. You don't have to have a problem anymore about defining households. Because a lot of people think a house is a household. It's not true. A house is not a household. And you don't go around and say, well, look, I passed the house and so on. Or I finished with that house. You might finish with that house. But you have not finished with the households.
In the building.
In the building.
Yeah.
That's just purely a physical structure called a house. But in that house may be several households. But then again, what is the definition? What is the definition that the government is using for a household? Take this quick example. A son and his father. His father is aged. He's a pensioner. The son is renting from somebody else. Now you have two adults plus a landlord. Who's getting this 200,000? However, if you go by individuals, those two people will get 100,000 each. You're 200,000. But if they have 10 adults in there, they'll get $1 million. And it will avoid the fratricide and every side that you will get about this 200,000 in a household.
Because which member of the household will receive the money?
Correct.
And how many members of the household will benefit from it?
Well, don't worry the benefit part, because all the government is interested in is paying it to whoever is supposed to get it. Then the problem starts, the intercommunal problems going to start, the bickering, the biting, the backbiting, the backstabbing, and even worse. Because when it comes to money, even families fall out. Right? Even families fall. So you've got this problem. The plus, here's some of the pluses about giving it to individual. First, you started by using the GCOM register for adults. Started by using the GCOM register. So everybody who makes a claim to the 200,000, you could tick them off. At the end of the day, you will get a fair idea of the adults who are resident in Guyana and who are therefore eligible to vote. That's the first thing you will get. The second thing is you can supplement that with GRA information on tin. So GRA could take off all those who claim 200,000 and determine who is not on their roll. NIS could slip in and begin to look at all those who claim the 200,000 and determine who are eligible to pay NIS but not paying NIS. You see, this is the beauty about going individuals. The question is whether the government wants to know this kind of information.
I am looking at the accountability side in addition to what you've just discussed with us. Nobody is saying what is the mechanism for disbursement. We have seen in small grant distribution, particularly in the rivers in Region 1, the Mabruma sub-region, where one household got nothing and one got $550,000 and so on. but the accountability seems to have taken the form that everybody got what they were supposed to have gotten. Here's the situation with cash, bags of cash moving around. And even as bags of cash move around and you have the associated security risks, you have $12 billion that you don't know where it's going before the process starts. So where is the framework for handling this matter? What is the plan? What are the procedures? And these are things that we don't know about. Nobody is opposed to collecting money. It's our money. And we're saying, as a political party, the People's National Congress Reform has been saying, put oil money in the hands of people.
Yes. Yes.
But when you put oil money in the hands of people, there must be a system of accountability to ensure that you didn't thief more than you gave the people.
But you see, this is exactly why we continue to use that this was just a knee-jerk reaction to a problem that had been festering 2-3 years before. If they were genuinely persuaded about the effectiveness of a UBI, Universal Basic Income scheme,
it would have been in the budget, wouldn't it?
Well, first of all, even before it went in the budget, they would have had somebody study it, right? Look into it as it relates to Guyana, and come up with the kind of approach that they will use to the UBI. Because the UBI doesn't necessarily mean that I have to give everybody 200,000. The UBI could target the persons who go to school, the health centers, who with children who go to health centers, all these different things. If they had done that, and once they would have made a decision what approach they would use, they will then determine baseline information. And they'll get this baseline information from GCOM, they get it from GRA, they get it from NIS, they get it from whoever. And then they will get a fixation on average numbers that they got to target. Then they will get an idea of how much they will prepare to put in, thus giving an understanding of how much each person or each subset will get, and so on. And then you go down to implementation. You think you can print $60 billion just like that? Huh? You think you could print $60 billion overnight? It will take you roughly, to order $60 billion, it'll probably take you nearly half a year to a year. Because you got to go, whoever's print your money, you got to give them an advance notice, right? They ain't waiting on you for the next call to print money. They are engaged in other countries, printing other countries' money and so on. So then you have shipping and all these kinds of different. So yes, they may get a plane and fly it in, and then they have to put it in, and they have to credit it put it in the books. It's not today's story. So I'm presuming that they're not going to be ordering $60 billion of new money. But it's just presumptions, because I don't know what the hell they're doing, right? Now they're trying to tell you, oh, maybe some will be paid by checks.
They might be
some might be paid in direct account. How are you going to be paying in direct account, right? Outside of public servants who they may have their account numbers, how are you going to pay the other people direct account when they don't have their number? What are you going to do? Call me and tell me, bring my account number and I'm going to put the money?
Not just that. How do you know that who you're paying to is the head of the household? Or is part of that household?
That's right. How do you know who you're paying to anyhow as a resident Guyanese? Because I'm assuming that this thing is for resident Guyanese. And as I saw Shamsun Mohammed or so on, rightly indicated in a letter in today's papers, among other things, you got people who are away, who own houses and are renting the houses, among other things that you look. There are multitude of problems inherent in this business about household. They should have learned about the COVID grant and the problems that they got with the COVID grant, and seek to perfect or seek to understand that that's that approach that we can go. There's a much simpler approach, as I said, about giving the grant to an individual. But the long-term thing I want to indicate to you is whether they have been persuaded about the value of this approach. And if they are, then we must put it in law. We must have a statutory framework.
Right.
Right? For
Complete
this.
with regulations.
Complete with regulations about distribution, about implementation mechanism, about accountability, transparency framework. And one last point before you go. I see you mentioned the Auditor General. The Auditor General got no business in this distribution of cash grants.
He has to account for it.
He has to account. The Accountant General is the government's chief accountant.
Yeah.
That is the department that has to do with the implementation of this cash grant. And when it's finished, she prepares her statements and all the different supporting documentation and gives it to the Auditor General for audit. But you can't have the Auditor General involved in this thing here with the Auditor General auditing himself. That is essentially what they are saying. They have completely shut out the Accountant General's department in this matter by mentioning the Auditor General. So there it is also that you have a problem.
I want to shift a little bit here. The clock usually gets away from us.
I know.
Now, the PNC has spoken on a number of measures when it comes to the rising cost of living. If I recall, one, the party called for a living wage. The party called for a minimum wage, which it defined as a minimum living wage. This is 2 years ago. The number may not be relevant any longer. It may have grown. But back then, it was $150,000. The party has called for an elevation of the income tax threshold. Most recent call is for the threshold to move to $400,000. Do you share the view that lifting the threshold, taking it to $400,000, moving the minimum livable wage to upwards of $150,000 will create a more level playing field, bringing some level of equality, some level of reasonableness to this whole tax structure, as opposed to a $10,000 deductible per child?
Yeah.
Which in itself appears to be somewhat discriminatory, because due to health circumstances, economic circumstances, or just bare choice, some people will choose not to have or may not have children.
Correct.
And if you're saying that because you don't have children, you cannot benefit from a tax concession, that in my view is discriminatory.
Correct.
And so, in addition to all the expenses associated with shifting payroll packages and putting more emphasis on processing payroll in the private sector in particular as a cost, do you share the view that lifting that threshold to 400,000 and giving a real livable wage is a solution to the problem rather than this knee-jerk $10,000 deductible?
Again, Mervyn, let me say, I can't understand. At first face value, the measures appear, well, they are populist measure and they appear that workable and all this kind of thing. Well, as you go deeper, you find out that there are a huge set of problems. Some of them are so regressive that it didn't work thing. But let us talk about first the salary part. Interestingly, he says the idea is that nobody will earn. I presume it's no public servant, because I don't think he was meaning private sector. Will earn less than 100,000 by the end of 2025. I don't know why the end of 2025 as opposed to the beginning.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't know when he intends, because by the end of 2025, he may or may not be there.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you're saddling something with potentially the next government or so on.
Yeah.
But let's use the $100,000 quickly. The present minimum wage is $86,100.
Right.
To get to that minimum wage then requires, that will be roughly $13,900, right?
Yeah.
Let us assume that you are going to pay public servants the same 10% that you're giving to the teachers, that you agree with the teachers, because you ain't gonna pay public servants any more than that.
You're not getting to 100,000.
Right? No. So in 2024, which they will now be backdate to the 1st of January of 2024, even though it's being paid in December.
Right.
So you get 10% of 86,100, right? That will give you roughly 8,600. So in 2024, your minimum wage now is roughly $94,700. $94,700. So to get in 2025 to get to the 100,000, that's roughly $5,300.
Yeah.
$5,300 upon $94,700 works out about just over 5%.
Over 5%, right.
So you're telling me in the election year you're prepared to give me 5%? Huh? You give me 10 this year and give me 5% election. People must stop jumping up at these measures and go deeply in it and see what it means.
Hoodwinking is
That's
what
right.
some
You
politicians
understand?
would call it.
So that is the first one people must think about. It is nothing to shout about or jump up about, and that in any case, the threshold right now is 100,000. Right now, the threshold is 100,000. When your salary go to $100,000 in a minimum wage in 2025, how have you gained? You haven't gained anything. You still beyond a gross salary of so much. You still haven't gained anything. You see? So that is one. The second thing about the child allowance, again, a populist measure which potentially has appeal. But let me show you how in reality, how it works against a poor person. A poor person has more children than a rich or a middle class.
Yeah.
A poor person has got anywhere between 3 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
But that same poor person works, most of them at minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them a lot of them at the private sector minimum wage,
Yeah.
which is 60,000.
Yeah.
The government owner is 86. So let me ask you something. Without, it's a deduction from your it's a deduction before you reach chargeable income.
Right.
It's not 10,000 being given in your hand like
Right.
the PNC has suggested that you will get a child grant
Right.
of 10,000.
Mm.
This is a deductible. But I have no income from which this 10,000 can be deducted.
Precisely.
I get in 86,100 as my minimum wage. 93,000 this year.
So the,
100,000 2025.
so the middle to upper class will benefit and the poor will not.
That's right. I got 3 children. I suppose I got a 30,000 deducted from the taxes payment, but I am not paying any tax. How is that helping me? You understand? How is that helping me? That's one. Secondly, it's a backward step. You see, when we had code number in the 70s,
Mhm.
60s, 70s,
Up to the
80s,
90s.
right up to the early 90s, because it was abolished in 1992, I think it was.
92, yeah. I
Right?
remember.
There was a lot of cookery and fraud and bribery and all kind of thing, you know, I mean, to get a code number. You understand?
And for viewers, that means that there was a code number for the number of dependents that you
That's right.
declared.
Dependence, life insurance,
Right.
you have to put all that medical,
And
UV,
mortgages and so
education, mortgage, all these things, you put it in a pot. And then when you come out, you look for code number and you think it.
you pay
This is
taxes
backward.
on that basis.
You know, asking people on a simple child allowance now to go change the whole software and
Yeah.
everything else to look, man. All they had to do is put up the threshold. Whether the threshold is 400,000 as the PNC has put out in yesterday's paper, or whether it's 250,000 or so on, the problem can be solved by putting the threshold as high as possible so it doesn't have to be tampered with every single year.
Right.
And don't forget, because this is where I have problems with Ali, real problems. First of all, he said 200 taxes. Well, he don't listen to his master.
But I was coming there.
Hold on,
because
hold on.
That's
He
here.
doesn't listen to his master. His master has recounted and got 350 something taxes. So he's contradicting his master again.
Again. Yeah.
Again, his master said it's 350 something. And who knows, he may count again and get 5 something. But at all times, they're not put it. But that was the side. I thought the whole thing was funny when he put
Yeah.
it. But again, he lapsed. He talked about how we had only $65,000 threshold.
Yes, he did.
But it is $65,000 or 1/3 of your gross income,
Right.
whichever is higher.
Yeah.
Whichever is higher. When we came in, the threshold was $50,000. So somebody earning $600,000, their free pay was only $50,000, and they had to pay tax on $550,000. With our movement, you get 1/3 of 600. That's $200,000 you can take away right away. So your taxable income now is 400,000. But guess what? We also remove the tax on your NIS contribution.
Precisely.
So all the employees' contribution, NIS contribution, is deductible now from your 400,000. So if you were paying as a 30,000 per month as a 600,000 earner, then you deduct that 30,000 from your 400. So your taxable now is 370,000. And they had a single flat tax. We brought in an element of progressivity into it. 28% you were being taxed at in the force, $1 point something million of gross income, and 40% on the balance. And we had said on many occasions that we were going to bring in a middle rate and adjust the low and higher rates. All of those are progressive measures that are better than telling me that you are going to discriminate with a childless couple or a childless woman or a childless man. It's not that the man making thing, but he can't claim the thing because he's not minding any child or so on. You're going to discriminate by bringing in a child at this stage when they have all these other different approaches that will incorporate and allow those who don't want to get children to benefit across the board than those who want to get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3 children. So that is what I found really as a populist measure. But hey, poor people are not going to benefit from it. Then the other one that you talked about was remind me. I think that one.
The actual livable wage
and the actual livable wage. Look, it is clear. It is absolutely clear. 150,000 is what I recommended that the teachers could have started with. 150,000. It is easy to do. And we come back to what we said 2 Sundays ago. There's so much waste in this system. There's so much waste. The 60 billion that he is getting is not new money. It is coming from a combination of the reality that they're probably going to not necessarily cut the capital program because a lot of this money can't be paid until next year. It's not there in the budget anyhow. So it would have to be voted. And even if there were savings in the budget, you couldn't via this concept of via. You couldn't via from capital from capital to current. You cannot via from capital to current. You could via from current to capital. So they would have to go back to the parliament to get some money. In all of this, they don't say what is going to happen with the $7 billion that is in the budget. Because
has not been touched.
That's right. This 60 billion that we talked about, as I said, is not going to happen this year. Most of it, even if, because again, if you go by there, it said nothing is going to happen before Christmas. Christmas is the 25th, and in that 5 days, there's nothing much you can do. So the bulk of this money is coming next year, and it obviously will be put in next year's budget, right?
But which sensible government, which caring government will vote $7 billion for cost of living relief, and after 10 months, not give a single cent or not utilize a single cent for the purpose intended? And then you bring these proposals now and you say 5 months, and 5 months where no budgetary allocation is in place, and you say nothing is going to happen before Christmas. So you're talking about January. You go down to May. So you announce the measures now, and you have people reaching out expectantly, living an expectant life, maybe creating debts on this money that they anticipate that they'll receive.
Correct.
For 5 additional months.
Correct.
And you say you're caring. I mean, I can't understand it.
And, somebody say, Winston, you're economist and so on, but, people don't want to hear nothing but inflation and so forth. They don't collect the money. But you see, this is unfortunate. Inflation attacks poor people and people on fixed income. You're already in an inflationary environment, all right? Because it is absolutely clear we're not producing enough. We're not producing enough. And we're importing so much as to be putting pressure on our foreign currency and our foreign reserve. That is a fact. Don't let me run from it. That is a fact. But it is also known that during Christmas time, prices spiral. Even if it doesn't spiral, they go up in anticipation of back pay.
Yeah.
In anticipation of increased purchases. In other words, money in people's hands. People get the box on. They get the box on. They get remittances. They get the lump sum back pay. The army and security people get an extra bonus and all these kinds of stories. Big money paying out during those things. So in anticipation of that, prices begin to rise. All right. So in that environment, you were proposing to instantaneous, if we took our friends instantaneous, pump $60 billion.
No, but as a professional, look, I want to ask you this. Jack Dew and Ali at various times said that the PNC talking stuff that isn't relevant and can't be implemented. You're talking about $300,000 per household. You're talking about salary increases, PNC, you know what you're talking about, because if you do these things, you'll fuel inflation. If you pay the teachers what they truly deserve, you'll be fueling inflation. If you convert one-off bonuses into real salary increases, which would be perpetual and which will contribute to superannuation benefits, you'll be fueling inflation. Cash grants to household, no, we can't deal with that. It'll be fuel. This is Jagdeo and this is Ali. But all of a sudden, 60 billion, boom. I mean, is it that these people are bipolar, or is it that these people forget what they say?
No, I think they ride on the concept that what I said earlier, money illusion. They ride on the concept people rather feel good when you put money in their hands. They don't care about inflation. I shouldn't use the word don't care, but uppermost in their mind is the money that they get in their hand. They will complain subsequently when they seek to go to the shop to buy something that they knew that before this announcement, the price was $10. But when they got their back pay now and they go, the shop has doubled the price of it, and so on. They can grumble, but they get extra. The reality is, though, that the problem that you are trying to solve or alleviate, whether temporary or not, is exacerbated by this, what you're doing. Again, as I said, pay the people the 200,000, right? But if you had dripped that into the economy by paying, say, 25,000 per month, so it's dripping into the economy, right? The expectation of prices are lower. 25 times 3 times 12, that's 300,000. It also makes the poor people plan better because they know a 25,000 coming in. I'm gonna add my, if there's a pension, add my little pension. I'm starting, I'm up to about 50, 60,000 and so forth, right? Predictable income, and it's dripping into the economy. It's not no big push into the economy as to, because let me tell you something. This thing has a cost to the government. The government now has to turn around and mop up this huge sum of money that they pumped into the economy through treasury bills. There's a cost to treasury bills because it's those big ones who are going to buy up all the treasury bills, right? The big companies and so on. They're going to buy up the treasury bills. It's a cost to the government. There's, of course, a cost to the government for printing the money. There's a cost to be printing the extra money. There's a cost involved in that. So, and then, of course, inflation is a tax. It's a cost on incomes, right? It's a tax, right, on income. So you have these minimum 3 effects as a result of this that you have. Of course, if you don't push the money out there, and you just have what you call imaginary money, which is they put it in the bank, so they don't have to print, right? They put it in the bank. And if you write checks, you know, and so on, it's just paper moving around, right? Cash is flowing, but paper's moving around, accept that. Notes, in other words, notes in circulation is not as large as if you pump the $60 billion into the economy.
3.5 minutes remaining, Mr. Jordan.
You should have made this program 2 hours, man. Or you're gonna make a program one hour?
Because we want you to come again. The PNCR has been advocating from day one free university education, not free tuition fees, not free tuition, but free university education, financed by revenues from oil and gas. The PPP, which is the party that abolished free university education, also committed to at some point doing that. But we now see a promised 2025 measure of free tuition. Ali said that by January 2025, tuition fees will be abolished. 3 minutes. Tell us, what are the implications vis-a-vis abolition of tuition fees and free university education?
Okay. Well, let us praise LFSB for the transformative decision he made in 1976, I believe, at a speech Labor Day in the National Park, where he announced free education from nursery to university. It was only enshrined, I believe, afterwards in 98 Constitution, but it effected. That's the year I went into university again, because all prior to that, I just wondered how I would get to university. And by the way, the cost of going to university at that time was $100 per year. $100 per year. And that was a big problem for me getting into. But from the time he said free education, there was this mass surge into UG. I remember sitting down in a class in October 1976, a politics class. And they had about almost 300 people in the LLT, we used to call it then, before they made the George Walcott Lecture Theatre. People sitting down all in the well all over the place. That was the reaction of this free education, you understand, of nursery to university. And then, of course, by 1994, the new government come in 1992. You know, it's Jagan who instituted fees when university started. And it's other Jagan's government who instituted fees in 1994.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that is just a tidbit that people seem not to remember, or know, right? Good. And then you had this business continuing all the time, notwithstanding the fact that the thing was enshrined in the Constitution. People say how it's aspirational, all this kind of foolishness. But the long and short was, and for all those who were jumping up on Facebook who doesn't even seem to know the basic history, that education was free. I went to university again, I'm free from 1976, 1981. And no, I didn't fail no course. I have to do a 1-year national service. And let me tell you, for all those who I see in today's paper, they're making a joke, one of those who like the conversations, anywhere else. Talking about, I was happy and proud to do 1-year national service because it made me a better person, it made me a disciplined person, and it made me know a lot about Guyana. And hence I couldn't appreciate Matthews Ridge and where the drug find and so on, because I went to Papaya.
I lived there.
Right? There you go. Right? So I think the intent of the government really is to free education indeed, and not just tuition. He might have slipped, or he might have interchanged tuition with the rest of the thing. And if he didn't, then he must come back out and say, I mean everything. Okay? As opposed to just tuition. But here, before we go, here's my larger concern, and I had a letter to this effect a couple months ago. I saw what free education did to University of Guyana. It released a valve for all those people who couldn't go to University of Guyana. So there was this huge influx. UG wasn't prepared for it. They didn't have the facilities. They didn't have the resources to man such thing. As the economy tanked, the quality. Right? When I went to university, I had excellent lecturers, I had professors of international repute and so on. But as it tanked, the university tanked, you end up with people with first degree teaching and all this kind of story, therefore debasing and devaluing the quality of the education that you are getting. Of course, not during my time, but certainly there afterwards. So the long and short is, I could see my alma mater in serious trouble going down the road, because they had a level of freedom and independence when fees were being paid. Now they have to depend on the government for almost all of their income. I would say roughly 90% of their income or more. They have to depend on the government. And if you take the mayor and city council as a guide and what they are going through, I weep for UG. I'm telling you, I weep. And already they have been suggesting where they put in gold on par with UG in terms of the resources that each one of them
ahead of
UG. And they put it ahead of UG, that's number one. And number two, they already have been talking about whether we could give education in building-less. In other words, then UG got too many buildings and all this kind. So the demarch on UG has started. And I weep for what is down the road for UG, and perhaps all those students who are there and so on, they should begin, in addition to going there free and so forth, they should begin the debate on UG must have a permanent fixed income to guarantee its survival,
together with a useful subvention.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you a fixed When I said fixed, not as in fixed. In other words, it either should be by statute or something that UG income will be a minimum of this, progressively increase as its intake and so on, or per student or something. But their income must be predictable, not negotiable. Predictable.
A good note on which to end the program. And as we close, I remind our viewers that the leader of the People's National Congress Reform has always been saying since he became leader of the party that for Guyana to grow, the PPP must go. That is all we have time for today. We'll meet again next Sunday by God's grace. Until then,